So this nice little fella, I just caught right over there, which is one of the most famous sites in Canadian history that very few people know about. I'll throw him back. And stick around and I'll tell you all about it today. There we go. This one. Another little pike. Another little pike by what we would call the site of a famous Canadian incident which happened 204 years ago today. Today is September 11th, and 204 years ago today, on this very beach on a day much like today, Owen Keveny was murdered. His body was placed on that island over there and covered in rocks and brush and marked with a small white cross. This river at one time, back in the early 1700s, was called La Rivière Maurepas, and was named after the Count of Maurepas, who was a French statesman who was in charge of protecting the French colonies. He strengthened the French Navy to protect the French colonies. It was named after him. At the end of this river, near Lake Winnipeg, was Fort Maurepas. So this was the river to Fort Maurepas. So it was called La Rivière Maurepas. Later, Fort Maurepas was moved and renamed, and then this river went to Lake Winnipeg. So then it was called the Winnipeg River. For about 150 years, this waterway was the main link between Upper and Lower Canada, Montreal, and the Red River, which is now Winnipeg, which gave you access to Lake Winnipeg and points further west. So it was sort of the center of trade, and it basically ran on pemmican. Bison meat was dried, and it was pounded, and it was mixed with bison fat and stored in leather bags by the indigenous people, and it was sold to the fur traders. And it was called pemmican. Things were humming along quite nicely until 1812 with the arrival of the Selkirk settlers. And they arrived with little food but lots of weapons. And pemmican was what they needed. And the pemmican was also what the fur traders needed. And that's what kept this whole fur trade industry in business, was the pemmican. That's what they ate all the way from here to their travels to Montreal, to the Hudson's Bay and out west. And the Selkirk settlers had lots of weapons, and they were prepared to use those weapons and interrupt the pemmican trade. And that started the Pemmican Wars, and between the Hudson Bay Company and the Northwest Company. And Owen Keveny was a casualty of that war, I guess you could call it. Eventually the violence between the two companies resulted in the two companies merging in 1820. So Owen Keveny was a Selkirk settler, and he was not a pleasant man. And that might have contributed to him being murdered, because he became a burden. And the easiest way to get rid of him was to kill him. He had been committed to stand trial in Fort William, and he was being taken there when Fort William was captured by the Hudson's Bay Company. And upon hearing that, his captors turned back, and they didn't know really what to do, I guess. And Owen Keveny needed to relieve himself, and he pulled the canoes up onto this sandy beach. And as he was getting back into the canoe, he was shot, and he was run through twice with a sword. The order that happened in is unclear. His murderers stripped him of his bloody clothes and his belongings, and they shared it amongst themselves, and they bragged about the murder, and they confessed to the murder, basically, in court too. And his body was dragged into the bush. Will never be found, according to the murderers. And the indigenous people, well, they found his body, and they took it out of the bush and they placed it on this small rocky island. and they buried it in the manner of the white man. The indigenous people normally buried their bodies 5 feet deep. And the white man back in the day, well, he just took the bodies and placed it on the rocks and covered it with branches and rocks and put up a small white cross and called it a day. So that's what the indigenous people did with Owen Keveny's remains, is they put it on this island, covered it with branches and a few rocks, put up a small white cross, and then that cross remained there for a few years and was talked about by travelers as they went down the river. But in times of high water, this island is underwater. And that white cross and Owen's remains would have been washed away at some point. So there would be nothing on this island. You do not have to go on this island to go tromping around it. This spot is unique because there was a white cross here. We're in undangerous waters. Now, it was common to see white crosses at the base of rapids all along the Winnipeg River. But this place was unique, and that white cross stood out because there is no danger here. There's danger of getting murdered. Owen Keveny's murderers were arrested, and they faced trial, and they were convicted, and they were sentenced to hang. But that sentence was never carried out because there was a fight over jurisdiction. It was determined that the courts did not have jurisdiction in this area. So the sentences were never carried out. They did not really face justice. That in itself, the testimony at that trial, is one of the reasons why this is a sort of an infamous case in Canadian history. Now, some of you will know where this is. I don't reveal the exact location because this is not public land. This is indigenous land, and for that reason I'm not landing ashore to do this little video. And I respect the indigenous ownership of the land, and I hope you will too, and not disturb this area. I hope you enjoyed this video and our little walk back through history. If you did, please hit the thumbs up button and like this video and let us know. And we'll see you in the next video. Thanks a lot for watching.